For the past year, we have been flooded with headlines about the wild behavior and spending of the director of the FBI, podcaster Kash Patel. Well, now today, MS Now reports the Judiciary Committee Democrats are investigating whistleblower accounts that FBI Director Kash Patel has, quote, been demanding special perks from bureau employees during his taxpayer-funded travels throughout the country, including helicopter tours and jet ski excursions. An FBI spokesman says Patel has reimbursed all personal travel and expenses. But now it's not just the Democrats seeking answers from Patel in his office. It is one of Patel's staunchest defenders. Republican Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley has now also been demanding proof of reimbursement, along with other information on Patel's spending.
A new controversy is surrounding FBI Director Kash Patel after a whistleblower account raised serious questions about how federal personnel and resources may have been used during his travel. According to the allegations, Patel has repeatedly treated the FBI less like the nation's top law enforcement agency and more like a personal concierge service. This reportedly was not an isolated incident. Several months ago, Patel faced scrutiny over claims that FBI resources were involved in arranging a snorkeling or scuba diving excursion during a trip to Hawaii. At the time, some dismissed it as a single questionable episode, but new reporting suggests there may have been a broader pattern.
Is the Justice and Intelligence Correspondent for MS Now. Ken, I've known many people in my life who've worked for the federal government. And one thing is, even at pretty high levels, they are like, it is a real intense, like, reimbursement payment travel situation. You are not living high on the hog. You're not going to nice hotels. So what is the issue here that is being flagged by these whistleblowers?
Well, what they are saying, Chris, to Democrats is that not only is Kash Patel jetting around the country and the world, really, on the taxpayer dime in a very nice executive FBI jet, but that when he gets there, he's demanding special treatment, special perks. He wants to be entertained. He famously told a group of special agents in charge during a meeting that if their office had good golf courses and good hiking, they would see more of him. This is according to the Democrats, an account that they got. And he seems to be living by that maxim. Now, I should say that after we published this story, the FBI sent us a statement denying that he had sought a jet ski excursion or a helicopter tour. But we know they've acknowledged that he did a VIP snorkeling tour of the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, which is really controversial because that's essentially a watery grave for more than 1,100 sailors and Marines who died that day.
The latest allegations involve FBI personnel reportedly helping arrange recreational activities, including jet ski excursions and private helicopter tours. And that distinction matters. No one disputes that the FBI director needs security, protected transportation and carefully planned accommodation, a private hotel entrance, secure vehicles, and restricted access may all be necessary because of the sensitive nature of the job. But recreational activities are different. A jet ski tour is not automatically a national security matter. A private helicopter ride does not become official government business simply because a senior official happens to be on board. So, the central question is simple. Were FBI resources being used for legitimate government purpose, or were federal employees being asked to provide personal benefits to the director? That question goes directly to one of the most basic principles of public service. Taxpayer resources are supposed to be used for public purpose.
And look, Democrats acknowledge that he's a required traveler. He has to fly on the FBI jet by policy, even when he's flying on personal trips. And Chris Wray did that as well, the previous FBI director. But what they're saying is it's obvious to everyone that he's exploiting this, that he's planning official trips to coincide with personal trips, to watch his girlfriend perform. She's a country singer, or to go to the Olympics, as we all saw. And it's obvious for everyone to see. And now Chuck Grassley is actually asking questions about it, which is remarkable.
Yeah, the actual verbatim quote is so good that it's from your reporting, so allow me to read it. A source told Democrats about something Patel was overheard saying to field office personnel last year, quote, if you have golf, hockey, fishing, or hunting and beautiful sights, you're going to see a lot of me, which is really quite a thing to say. Well, Grassley has, been very defensive of Patel, but also has this long history of being, he prides himself on oversight. What does his involvement mean for this actually getting some teeth?
Federal money appropriated by Congress is not a personal expense account for powerful officials. It is authorized for specific programs, operations, and responsibilities. It cannot simply be redirected toward private entertainment or personal convenience. The rules can be extremely strict. In many government offices, employees cannot even use public money to buy refreshments for a private event. Retirement parties are often paid for by staff personally because taxpayer dollars cannot be used for personal celebrations. That is how carefully federal spending is supposed to be controlled. So, when the head of the FBI is accused of receiving assistance for recreational tours, the issue is not just bad optics. It raises a much larger question. Were government personnel, official time, or taxpayer-funded resources used for something unrelated to the job? Patel has faced similar criticism before.
You're right to say that. Well, he has leverage. Unlike the Democrats who can flail around but really can't demand the FBI produce any documents, they have no leverage. Grassley can force them to do that. And I noticed that the FBI had a much more detailed response today to the questions about, for example, the BMW SUVs that Kash Patel ordered purchased than they did back in December when we first broke that story, because Grassley, the Republican chairman of the Judiciary Committee, is asking about them now. And so I think there is a real chance to get some answers here. Grassley tonight tweeted kind of mocking the Democrats and saying, why weren't they interested in oversight when Chris Wray was flying on the jet? The issue is nobody thought that Chris Wray was exploiting this to the extent that they believe Kash Patel is. Chris Wray was going to see his family. He was required to fly. Kash Patel is going to Las Vegas. He's going to the Winter Olympics in Italy. He's going all around the country, and everyone can see that. And Democrats and now Chuck Grassley want him to account for this spending, and they want to make sure that he's at least reimbursing the government for the cost of a coach flight, which is what the policy dictates, Chris.
He was previously photographed celebrating after a hockey victory, drinking beer while attending the event. The issue was not simply that he went to a hockey game. The real question was whether the taxpayers covered any part of the travel, and whether the trip was genuinely connected to official FBI business. Officials often defend controversial travel by pointing to meetings or government duties that happened during the same trip. But adding an official meeting to an itinerary does not automatically make every personal activity on that trip official business. That is why records matter. Who arranged the transportation? Who paid for the excursions? Were FBI agents assigned to coordinate these activities? Were those services necessary for security, or were they mainly for Patel's personal enjoyment? Without answers, the full legal significance remains unclear.
Yeah, hold on a second. I'm just going to ask the control room to cue up the B-roll we have of Chris Wray chugging a beer in the locker room of the Olympics while he's. Oh no, we don't actually have that. Didn't happen. Finally, for you, we now have the dates for the confirmation hearing of Todd Blanche, who's been nominated by Donald Trump to be the Attorney General. He's the acting Attorney General and former defense attorney for him. I got to imagine we are going to see people coming out of the woodwork, particularly DOJ alums, to oppose his nomination. What are you looking for as we head towards those big hearings?
Well, honestly, I'm looking to see what these wavering Republicans will do, the John Cornyn's of the world, the people who have no reason to vote for Todd Blanche. But I got to say, it's looking like maybe they will in the end, because there's a lot of feeling that Todd Blanche, for all that he's been doing for Donald Trump, for all the norms he's broken at DOJ, at least he's competent. At least he's an experienced prosecutor, and maybe he's going to stop some bad things from happening behind the scenes. That's how far we've fallen, because the people are looking at it saying, well, it's either Todd Blanche or it's somebody like an Ed Martin, and Todd Blanche is preferable. So he may well get confirmed. But you're right. There's going to be a lot of fireworks. There's going to be a lot of calling to account on the things that he's done, particularly since he's been acting attorney general. He's taken the Justice Department to places that we've never seen before, Chris.
Not every questionable expense is automatically a crime. There is a difference between violating internal policy, breaking ethnic rules, misusing appropriated funds, and committing a prosecutable felony. But the absence of an immediate criminal charge does not make the conduct acceptable. The director of the FBI holds one of the most powerful positions in American law enforcement. That person oversees investigations, enforces federal law, and sets standards for thousands of employees. When someone in that position appears to blur the line between public duty and private benefit, it sends a dangerous message across the government. It tells employees that rules may apply differently depending on how much power someone has. And that is how public trust begins to collapse.
Hi, everyone. It is noon here in New York. I'm Alicia Menendez. Welcome to On the Line. Have Kash Patel's antics finally caught up with him? President Trump's FBI director is facing new congressional investigations, not just into allegations of lavish spending on the job, but also into his surge of FBI resources to reinvestigate the 2020 election. First, on the spending. Democrats now getting some GOP backup in their probes of what they've dubbed Patel's jet setting. MS Now has viewed a letter from Republican Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley demanding Patel turn over information about the Bureau's purchase of BMWs instead of the standard Chevy SUVs, and whether he's reimbursed the FBI for personal travel on FBI aircraft. And if anyone should know about the pitfalls of an FBI director using a government plane for his own benefit, it's Kash Patel.
Chris Wray doesn't need a government-funded G5 jet to go to vacation. Maybe we ground that plane. $15,000 every time it takes off. Just a thought.
Go take their money. Chris Wray doesn't need a private jet. We're not the guys running around on private jets. And somebody maybe in Congress should ask for how many flights on a private jet Director Comey took, or my predecessor Director Wray took, and how many personal trips they took.
But the questions Patel is facing go way beyond his travel. Senate Democrats now also demand answers about why Patel has deployed hundreds of FBI analysts to work on record checks in Georgia related to the 2020 election. They are worried Patel is diverting resources from investigations into things like terrorism and corruption in order to placate Donald Trump, something Senator Mark Warner, the vice chair of the Intel Committee, called negligence and abuse of power of the highest order.
The rule of law does not survive because regulations exist on paper. It survives because officials actually follow those regulations and because violations lead to consequences. When misconduct is ignored or dismissed as too small to investigate, future abuses become easier. That is the broader danger surrounding this controversy. Critics argue that officials inside this administration may believe they are protected as long as their political allies control the Department of Justice and congressional oversight. But political protection is not permanent immunity. If control of government changes, future investigators could review travel records, spending documents, internal communications, and witness testimony.
Let's bring in MS Now Justice and Intel reporter Ken Delanian, who was busy this morning breaking both of these exclusive stories on Kash Patel. And with me on set, former senior CIA, White House, and State Department official Ned Price, along with MS Now political analyst and Bloomberg opinion executive editor Tim O'Brien. Ken, what a morning. Two big new investigations here. Let's take them one by one. Let's start with the travel. Democrats have wanted answers on this for months. How significant is it that now you have Grassley, who has questions too?
Oh, I think it's deeply significant, Alicia, and particularly because it was notable that Grassley did not make this letter public. So he's trying to thread the needle here. But he has a long history of conducting oversight of the spending of taxpayer money with both parties in power. And he said that in his letter to Kash Patel. He said, it's nothing personal. We just feel like we deserve answers about your use of taxpayer-funded resources, including your use of the FBI jet and your purchase of these BMW SUVs. And by the way, I got a new response from the FBI. They did not respond initially when I queried them yesterday about this reporting, but I just now have a response. And one of the things they told me was that they purchased these BMWs from the State Department, and they were sitting idly in a warehouse. That is new information. That's not what they told us back in December when we first reported on this. But just in general, you have this building sort of momentum of drip, drip, drip stories about Kash Patel and his use of government resources. We hear things all the time from people inside the FBI who are very troubled by it. They just don't think it's a good look. And now you have the senior Republican chairman of the Judiciary Committee asking questions about it. And unlike the Democrats, he has the leverage to get these answers. What he will do with that information remains to be seen. Will he hold a hearing? Will he make it public? But at least he's asking the questions. At least.
Congress can demand documents. Inspectors general can examine whether agency policies were violated. And if evidence eventually shows that federal criminal laws were broken, prosecutors may still have time to act. In general, many federal felonies have a 5-year statute of limitations, although the exact deadline depends on the specific offense and circumstances. That means actions taken now could potentially remain legally relevant years after Trump leaves office, and officials should be careful about counting on future pardon. Trump has repeatedly shown that his loyalty is transactional. Many people who expected protection from him later discovered that political usefulness can disappear quickly. Anyone considering breaking rules for a president should understand one thing clearly. When the consequences arrive, that president may not be there to save them. This controversy is bigger than jet skis, helicopter tours, or a trip to Hawaii.
Ned, I want you to just bring us back here to Earth One. During your time in government, how often were you using government resources for personal use?
I can't recall a time I ever did. Look, but let me be serious here for a second. I don't begrudge this FBI director or any FBI director for flying on an FBI-owned airplane. That's what they have to do. When FBI directors travel domestically or internationally, they have to have secure communications at the ready. They have to be able to get places quickly and efficiently. If Kash Patel had been traveling for purely official business all this time, totally fine. Sure. And of course, an FBI director, just like any other human, is entitled to a vacation every now and then. I wouldn't begrudge that. But when you take a look at the totality of his schedule and the boondoggles that occasionally are interspersed with his official business, or let me flip that, the official business that is occasionally interspersed with the boondoggles, that I do begrudge, and that I think is a huge problem. And the fact that Senator Grassley, good for him, is coming onto this suggests this is something that it is grabbing even Republican attention.
It's not new, though, right? Like, we have known all of this. So why suddenly is Grassley interested?
That's a great question. You know, why suddenly is the Republican Party developing a spine around conflict of interest issues and corruption in the federal government when it went on in Trump's first term and it's gone on again? I have to sense that some of it is they're smelling it in the water. They're recognizing that everything that's come out.
Is that the reflecting pool water?
Yes, the reflective pond, as the president calls it. I think they're starting to see that voters are paying attention to this, and corruption has not been a thing voters have actually really focused on. But I think the recent revelation of Trump with his crypto billions, there's so much momentum around this, and people in his administration, I don't think would feel that they were flagrantly entitled to make use of government property and taxpayer money to, as Kash Patel did, go to Vegas with his girlfriend for purely entertainment. Or to chug beer with the U.S. hockey team, or on and on. All these different things he did that either were unbecoming of an FBI director or a fairly transparent misuse of government resources. So Trump's opened the door to this by his own behavior. He and his family crossed these lines. And I think the Republican Party now, they've got to be the ones to step up on this in a forceful way so their own constituents see this as a nonpartisan issue and as an issue around corruption that shouldn't be tolerated in either party.
It's a test of whether the federal government can enforce basic ethical standards against the people who lead its most powerful institutions. If these activities were paid for personally and required no inappropriate use of FBI resources, then Patel and the Bureau should release records proving that. But if taxpayer resources were used to provide private entertainment or special treatment, then Congress, inspectors general, and future law enforcement officials must take the allegations seriously. The director of the FBI cannot demand obedience to federal law while treating the agency like a private service. No official should be above scrutiny, and no government can preserve the rule of law when power becomes a substitute for accountability.